The question you never thought to ask is the one she's been waiting to hear. Not the compliment, not the grand gesture, not the perfect setting or the right music or the dimmed lights. One question, asked quietly, with genuine curiosity and zero agenda, and something in her, something that has been carefully guarded for years, maybe decades, quietly unlocks. Not because the question was clever, but because it was the first time in a long time that someone slowed down enough to actually ask. This video is about that question, what it is, why it works, and why the men who understand it experience a quality of connection with women that most men never get close to. You've been getting physically close while staying emotionally miles apart. Here's something that's probably happened to you, maybe more than once. You were with someone. The moment felt right. The closeness was real. And yet afterward, there was this strange hollowness, like you were physically present for something that emotionally never quite arrived. Like the intimacy happened on the surface while something deeper stayed locked behind glass, and you couldn't explain it. Because nothing went wrong exactly, it just never became what it could have been. Here's the truth that most men are never told about women and intimacy. For a woman, the physical experience is almost entirely determined by what happened emotionally in the minutes and hours before it. Her nervous system does not compartmentalize the way a man's often can. She cannot separate the quality of how she feels seen from the quality of how she experiences closeness, which means that every moment leading into intimacy is either building something or quietly dismantling it. Every question asked or not asked, every bit of genuine curiosity extended or withheld, every second where she felt truly noticed versus politely accommodated. The men who understand this don't just have better relationships, they have deeper ones. Ones where women feel safe enough to be fully present, emotionally, physically, completely. Today we talk about what those men do differently, and it starts with one question that changes everything. Why a question is more powerful than any statement. Most men, as intimacy approaches, shift into a mode of telling her she's beautiful, telling her how much she means to him, telling her what he wants. And these things are not wrong. Warmth and desire expressed openly are wonderful. But there is something more powerful than a statement in these moments, something that does what no compliment, however genuine, can do on its own: a question. Because a statement, no matter how heartfelt, is ultimately about you, what you see, what you feel, what you want. A question is about her. It turns the lens around. It says, before anything else happens here, I want to know where you are. I want to know what you need. I want to enter this with you rather than at you. That distinction between intimacy that happens at someone and intimacy that happens with someone is the entire difference between a moment she'll remember fondly and a moment she'll remember as deeply connecting. Questions create that shift. One genuine question asked at the right moment communicates more care than an hour of perfectly delivered compliments. 2. The question itself and why it works. The question is this: what do you need from me right now? Or in different contexts, is there anything you need me to know before we get closer? Or simply, how are you feeling, really? The specific wording matters less than the genuine intention behind it. What she needs to feel is that the question is real, that you actually want the answer, that you're not going to receive whatever she says with disappointment or redirection. Here's why this question does something almost neurological to a woman. She has spent most of her life in relationships, in family dynamics, in social situations, monitoring other people's needs and managing her own in the background. She is extraordinarily practiced at putting her own feelings on a shelf while she attends to the room around her. When someone asks what she needs, directly, sincerely, with full attention, it creates a small shock to that system. A good shock. The kind that says, this person is not just here for what they're going to receive. They came to find out what I need first. That experience of being genuinely asked rather than assumed about is rarer than it should be. And in the context of growing intimacy, It is transformative. 3. What she's been carrying that she never says. This is the part that most people skip past, but it matters enormously. When a woman is moving toward intimacy with someone, she is almost never arriving at that moment empty. She is carrying things: the texture of her week, a conversation that unsettled her, a worry she hasn't resolved, a low-level physical tension she's been holding in her shoulders since Tuesday, an old memory that proximity sometimes triggers without warning. None of this is dramatic. None of it is a red flag or a complication. It's just the reality of being a human being who doesn't have the ability to emotionally compartmentalize the way men are often socialized to do. And most men, not because they're selfish, but because they simply don't know, walk into those moments without asking, without creating any space for what she's carrying. And she sets it down as best she can and tries to be present anyway. But it's still there, just underground. And the intimacy that follows happens above a layer of unaddressed emotional static that never quite resolves. When you ask what she needs, when you create even 60 seconds of genuine space for her to say, "I'm a little in my head tonight," or "I just need to feel close to you before anything else," or "Can we just be still together for a minute first?" You do something remarkable. You clear the static. You invite her all the way into the room. And the woman who shows up after that question is answered is fully present in a way the woman who had to manage her unspoken things simply cannot be. 4. How to ask it so it lands right. The question can fail if it's delivered wrong, so this section matters. Timing. Ask it in a quiet moment, not as an announcement, not as a formal check-in, not with a tone that makes it feel like a therapy session. Ask it naturally, in the organic pause that tends to appear when closeness is building and both people are feeling the weight of the moment. Tone. Make it genuinely soft, not performed softness, real softness. The kind of voice that comes from actually caring about the answer. She will hear the difference immediately. Eye contact. Look at her when you ask. Not intensely, not searchingly, just openly. The way you'd look at someone you love who you want to understand better. And then, this is the most critical part, stop talking and actually listen. Not to compose your response, not to manage what comes next based on what she says, just to receive what she tells you, to let it matter, to let your face and your body reflect that her answer is landing rather than being processed. That quality of receiving, of being truly listened to by someone who is not formulating their next move, is something women experience so rarely that it sometimes brings tears before they even understand why. 5. What her answer will tell you that nothing else could. Whatever she says in response to that question, however she answers, "What do you need right now?" she is handing you a map to who she actually is in this moment. Not who she's performing, not who she thinks she should be, who she is. Maybe she says she needs to slow down a little. That tells you she's feeling something but isn't fully arrived yet. And that giving her that space without making it complicated is exactly what she needed from you. Maybe she says she just needs to feel close, to feel held first. That tells you that emotional warmth is her entry point to physical presence, and that prioritizing connection over progression is the most intimate thing you can offer. Maybe she laughs a little and says she's fine, she's exactly where she wants to be. That tells you the question itself did its work. She felt asked, she felt seen, and now she's fully here. Every answer is right. Every answer gives you something real to work with. And every answer moves you both towards something more genuine than you would have reached without asking. 6. The difference between checking in and checking a box. There's a version of this question that doesn't work, and it's worth naming clearly so you don't accidentally do it. Some men have learned that asking questions before intimacy is the right thing to do, but they ask in a way that is visibly performative. A quick, slightly transactional, "You good?" that is clearly expecting a "yeah" in response. A check-in that is really just a formality before proceeding. A question that announces itself as consent-seeking rather than genuine curiosity. She feels the difference between that and the real thing in less than a second. The real thing has no expected answer. It's genuinely open. It can receive, "Actually, I need 5 minutes," just as comfortably as it receives, "I'm right here." The real thing doesn't communicate a preferred outcome through the tone it arrives in. Ask from a place of actual willingness to receive any honest answer. Ask in a way that makes it clear that whatever she says will be met with warmth, not readjustment of the mood. That is the question that changes things. That is the question she'll think about later and realize she's never been asked quite like that before. 7. Why this makes you fundamentally different from other men. Here is something worth sitting with for a moment. Most women, by the time they reach adulthood, have experienced intimacy as something that happens largely on someone else's timeline, at someone else's pace, shaped primarily by someone else's needs. Not always dramatically so, just consistently, subtly, in the way that things are when one person tends to ask and the other tends to accommodate. The man who arrives at a moment of intimacy and genuinely asks what she needs first, who makes her needs the starting point rather than the destination, is an almost foreign experience for most women. Not because men are fundamentally uncaring, but because most men were never taught that this is where intimacy actually begins. They were taught that intimacy is a destination. They were never told it's a conversation. You now know it's a conversation. And the first line of that conversation, the one that sets the entire tone of what follows, is a genuine question about where she is and what she needs. That knowledge makes you rare. And rare, in the context of genuine human connection, is deeply, lastingly attractive. 8. What happens to her after she's been asked? Let me describe what shifts in a woman when a man has asked this question with genuine care and listened to the answer with genuine presence. Her shoulders drop slightly, her breathing slows and deepens. The part of her that was managing the interaction, monitoring how she's coming across, making sure she's appropriate, staying slightly ahead of what's expected of her, quietly steps back. And what comes forward in its place is the version of her that doesn't come forward for most people. The unguarded one. The one that doesn't need to perform or protect or manage anything. The one that can be fully in her body because her mind has been taken care of. The one that is completely, unreservedly present, not just physically, but in every dimension that makes intimacy feel like intimacy rather than just proximity. That version of her, the one you get when you've asked the right question and received the answer with the right kind of presence, is the one she usually keeps behind the most carefully maintained door in her entire interior world. She doesn't open that door for just anyone. She opens it for the person who thought to knock first. It happens when you ask. Not when you know the right move, not when you set the right scene, not when you say the right thing at the right moment, when you ask. When you genuinely want to know where she is before you invite her anywhere. When you make her needs the first conversation rather than the afterthought. That question, "What do you need from me right now?" is not a technique. It is not a strategy. It is the most fundamental act of respect one person can offer another in a vulnerable moment. It says, "You matter more than the momentum. You matter more than where I thought this was going. You matter most, right now, right here, before anything else." And for a woman who has spent her life mattering slightly less than the momentum in these moments, that question lands like something she didn't know she'd been waiting for. Ask it, mean it, listen to the answer with everything you have, and then watch what opens. If this video gave you something real, if something in here shifted the way you think about closeness and what it actually requires, subscribe. Every week on this channel, we go into the psychology of genuine connection, the questions that matter, the presence that transforms, the things that make intimacy feel like coming home rather than just getting close. You're here because you want something real. This channel exists to help you build it.